This is Tim Willis, and armed only with a copy of OBS and a built-in laptop microphone. This is another video from the Nomad Funnelhacker. And today we're going to be looking at using images and customizing images in ClickFunnels. And I'm doing this in the current version of ClickFunnels, sometimes called ClickFunnels 2.0. What we see here is a kind of roughly put together funnel made out of just the basic default elements in ClickFunnels plus a few images from my library. I used this for another video and I'm going to use it for this video as well. It's not the prettiest thing ever, but it's good enough for demonstrating what we're going to do today. So you see I already have a couple images here. These are images down here, and that's an image there. So we're going to go ahead and add an image element, and you'll find that under media and then image, and we're going to get rid of this other one here. So we're starting with a default image element, and in this case we're doing for 2-column row, but if you look down here, this is a 3-column row that we have images in, and this is a 1-column row we have images in. So you can put them in any column, whether it's a 1-row column up to the 6-row column. It is going to affect the default size of the element when you first put it in, but we can adjust that. To start off with, we want to add an image to our image element. We're going to go here to image URL and click on that. That's going to bring up our image gallery, and we're just going to pick an image out of here somewhere. To start off with, we have image width and image height to adjust our size. Generally, you want to only deal with the image width. Once you start dealing with width and height, then you can go sideways real fast. That said, sometimes you do need to use the height. But for most time, you just want to leave the height set to auto. And your image width, it's more useful to have it as percentage. And it will be, by default, they'll give you a percentage, which you can work with it that way. You can also choose auto, which makes no difference in this case, but I prefer to work with pixels. When we do that, it goes down to 200. I think it's a little small. Let's try 300 pixels. Okay, that looks about right. Now, at least on my version of ClickFunnels, it only puts 15 pixels of top margin. Let's go ahead and take that off. Looks pretty decent, but let's go ahead and lower this headline some here. Maybe 15 pixels. So it's kind of aligned with our picture on the left. So having sized our picture, we have a couple different options we can still apply. Now, the first thing is we look at source. This is from upload. There's also a dynamic option you can use. I've never used a dynamic option. I just pulled them from my image library. You can also add alt text. You can put in text on what will appear there if you have an empty image slot. Down in size position, when you can set a ratio, I've never used that, but you can set one. I always just go with the image width and image height. You do have a fit option. I generally just go with the default fill option, but you can change it to different settings here. At this point, it doesn't seem to make much difference. And then we can align the picture to the left or the right, like that. Let's go ahead and center it. You also have a separate alignment for your mobile version. And one of the things we can do, if we can make this image clickable by putting in a URL. We also use some of these CSS codes like open pop-up, submit form, close pop-up, next step, mark page complete. If you wanted to make it where it's clickable, we would do this. And I'm just going to put in the URL for my web page. Just like that. I'm going to make the target a new tab most of the time because I want them to have this page open and then the link that they're going to open up in another tab. So let's go ahead and save that and see how that works. We'll go to our preview. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click on the image. And it loads up my web page. So you can direct it to any URL you want to that way. And then let's get out of the preview. So now we're back out of preview and we're back in the editor. Well, let's look at the other options we have with the picture. We have a filter control where you can add certain effects to the picture. You increase brightness, contrast. You can change the opacity, add saturation. You can make it grayscale, which doesn't make that much difference because it's already black. You can also invert the color like that. It's just a small set of filters. That's useful because, so otherwise if you wanted to do something like, say, add some saturation to a picture or adjust the contrast and brightness, you would have to actually export that picture out of ClickFunnels and put it into some kind of image editor like Canva or ClickDesigns or whatever. That's a cool little thing they've added. And when we add padding, generally by default your padding is going to be at 0, but you can add padding and that will push it down from the top, add padding to the bottom, or move it left to right, which is, since it's center, is just going to make it smaller. And so those are all size controls. We also, of course, can make it visible on all aspects, just the desktop, just the mobile, or we can hide the picture if we want to. Now here's where we can do a little customization with our corners, our borders, and our shadow. But first of all, since we're on a white background here, nothing's going to be really apparent unless we add either border or shadow. So let's start with border. And you see it puts a border around the image. And we have a black border so we can change the pixels so it's more apparent. We could change the color if we wanted to, make it just blue. Oh, let's make it just red, make it more apparent. And once we do that, it's kind of boxy looking. So what we can also do once we have that outline, whether it's the border or the shadow, is go to our corner control and add a curvature to the corners. And normally with a picture, you're just going to have it be all corners the same. Right now it's 4. Let's change that to 10. And then let's make it 30. You get more curvature. And at a certain point, 260 I find being the magic number for most things. You can get a circle. Now, the reason it's oval in this case instead of a circle is because in order to get that perfect circle, you need to have all your dimensions be the same all the way around. Now, this is obviously more rectangle shaped. So let's go return this to black. Let's go ahead and we're going to keep our corners, but we're going to turn off the border. And we're going to use the shadow. Turn that on. Okay, and you see sort of the same thing. We have that rectangular shape outline with our shadow now. And right now, our corners are set to no pixels. It reset itself whenever it changes. So we can change this to, let's go with 10 again. And you see it's also putting that corner curvature on our shadow. Now on our shadow, we adjust our blur and our spread. I like using 5 and 2 to start off with. Because with shadow, you don't want it to be that apparent most of the time. And then we can go ahead and use our opacity control to make the shadow lighter. something like that. We can change the color if we wanted to. And then the other thing we could do is let's bring this back all the way up to 100% on our color. And let's actually make our spread 5. Even if, let's make it actually 10. Okay. And let's take the corner off right now. And so we could use our X and Y controls. So let's put 5 there. And put 5 in the Y control. And so you get that sort of offset look going on. Again, that's kind of heavy depending on the color we want. Let's go with black. Might work, but we might want to also reduce that some. Get more shadowy kind of look, but you could do that, and you can put any number you want in here. We could go with 10 if we wanted to. And we can have just 10 on the X and 5 on the Y if we wanted to. Or we could go with 15 on the Y. Again, that shadow control, you can offset it to the left, or you could do it to the right. That requires you to put in negative. Like that, we put a negative 10, and we left it at the positive 15, so we're getting that kind of shadow, and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and turn the shadow off, and because I think we demonstrated that well enough, let's go ahead and save real quick. Save early, save often. So that's kind of how that works on the picture. Now here we have a 3-column row, and I just duplicated the picture. So the best thing to do if you're working a 3-column row would be to get your first picture set up with the size, the styling, and everything you want. Then duplicate that and then pull that element over to your next slot. And that way it will retain the sizing and the styling. And you just have to change the picture. So in this case, if we went here, went to our gallery, and chose another one of these images like that, it's going to be roughly the same size. Now you may have to make some size adjustments. What I just said assumes that all your pictures were the same size to begin with. If you're pulling pictures from different sources and they're different sizes, you'll probably have to do some adjustment. But that's how you can work that and save yourself from reinventing the wheel for every column. And then down here, we have a single image. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this picture here. And if you want to delete the picture, you just put your cursor in the image URL slot and clear it out. And now we have our image. Now, we've got to set the pixels right now. So let's set it to percent and 100%. So when you have a 1-column row and you put the image element, the image element is going to be big like this when you start off with. So just be aware of that. And then once you put an image in there, it's going to reduce the size. So we'll pick an image to throw in here. And we will use this one here. Okay, we're at 100%. If we go down to pixels, that's 1108, and we just size it down however we want, to whatever size we want. And we'll go with, let's call it 400. Now, while we're looking at this, let's move it down a little bit. Let's look at the height control, which I said you probably don't want to mess with unless you have to, but let's look at what happens if we do that. So we can go to auto to percentage. It's at 80% right now because it's probably keying into that 400 pixels. And so it doesn't look too bad, but you can change that percentage somewhat. It doesn't generally make that much difference. And generally you would only use this control if you were trying to match the height or it came out too stretchy. Let's move it to pixels. Okay, you see there, it's at 800 pixels there, and it's very stretchy. If we move it inwards, let's make it 400. Then it looks pretty good. We can also reduce that to less, like that, and then the further you go down, the more it's going to squeeze it. But as I said, for most cases, you want to leave that set to auto, because it's easier just to work with the sizing in one dimension than two. So that is pretty much it, covering using images in ClickFunnels. My name is Tim Willis. I'm a certified ClickFunnels funnel builder. I make tutorial and demonstration videos on ClickFunnels, sales funnel building, web page design, and all the tools that we use to accomplish all the above.